Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a Super Famicom game, and that happens to be Zoku, The Legend of Bishin, and it was developed and published by Magifact. And I never heard of them before, but don't you think their logo looks so fucking cute? It just looks so innocent looking, but yet it happens to be on a box art of something that is like super fucking epic. Now let's take a moment and just look at this masterpiece. Like, man, like that has to be like one of the coolest looking box arts I've ever seen, even for Super Famicom standards. Like, holy shit. If I knew about this game before I did my favorite Super Nintendo box arts, I totally would have added this in here. But anyways, the game was released in 1993, and to be exact, it was released on Christmas Day. Merry Christmas, motherfuckers! And the game's type happens to be a mixture of a driving game and a beat-em-up. So that's kinda interesting, but now let's talk about the game's story. So this game takes place in Neo-Tokyo in the year 2010, where a Great Depression happened. Wow, I don't remember that happening. And Mount Fuji erupts and everything is just totally fucked up. And most of the survivors are from a bunch of different gangs, so yeah, this game pretty much is a lot like Mad Max or Fist of the North Star. So this has potential to be one of the greatest things ever. And there are two playable characters you get to play as. There's Koji, and then there's Risa. So other than the main story mode, you do have a two-player mode and a single-player fighting mode, which pretty much plays like the beat-em-up sections. But only that you get to select different characters. I'll talk more about that mode a little later, but let's talk about the main story mode. So you always start first in the driving sections, and you gotta reach from point A to point B within a time limit. And you also gotta survive because there are other cars and motorcycles that will try to fuck you over. So yeah, you're not really racing in this game because everything is just trying to kill you, so you just gotta survive and make it within the time limit. And if you get hit a bunch of times on the road, whether it be from other cars or from the walls, then your character will go flying out of their car. And then it goes to the beat-em-up section where the time is still going and you gotta fight some random goons. It's kinda interesting to say the least, but yeah, it kinda sucks that it still takes away some time, but thankfully at least the beat-em-up sections are very short. And once you get to the next destination, you gotta beat up the boss and continue on to the next stage. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but doesn't the first boss of this game look like a typical SJW if they swallowed Bowser? But yeah, that's pretty much what consists of the story mode, and as for the fighting mode, like I said, you can play with two players or one versus a computer. So other than selecting the two main characters, you can also play as the boss characters, which is pretty interesting. Although I find it amusing that if you select either Aki or Mickey, then you actually get to play as two characters. In a strange way, it kinda reminds me of Noob and Smoke from Mortal Kombat Deception, and that takes care of that. So now let's take a look at the game's controls. So as for the driving controls, they're pretty mediocre to be honest. The steering is pretty slippery in this game, not the worst that I've ever seen, but definitely something that is annoying. But at least the acceleration does what it's supposed to do. But there's really not a whole lot else I get to talk about with the driving because it really is just very bare bones. It would have been awesome if you had like guns on the side of your car you get to shoot at like with the other cars, at least that would have been great. But overall, the driving in this game is not good, but it's also not really like horrible either. And as for the beat-em-up sections, well, unfortunately, it's not much better. But thankfully, at least moving around and the response timing when attacking at least works well enough. But the hit detection is very spotty, and there's not really a whole lot of moves you get to try. You only have like two attack buttons and a jump and a block. I really don't know how else to describe it, but it really is just that mediocre. So yeah, don't expect this to be like Streets of Rage or Final Fight, because it's really not. So now, as for the game's graphics, I can at least say that the graphics in this one are pretty good for 1993 standards. So I do like the way that the driving stages look, I think they do look really good. And of course, I do like the game's aesthetic, for that it does remind me of something out of Fist of the North Star. The sprite work on the cars look good, but as for the beat-em-up sections, they're alright I guess, not terrible. It's at the very least serviceable looking, but if there is one thing that is not only ugly, but also just really unhelpful in the game, would have to be the map. So you see on here, you're trying to get from the one yellow dot to the other yellow dot. But the problem is, there's like no road showing you where you're supposed to go, you just have to take a shitty guess. because the road designs in this game is all done in a labyrinth style, and you know, at first, normally I would be okay with it, but with this map system, it just makes it really tedious and fucking irritating. So yeah, fuck the map in this game, but everything else is at least serviceable or pretty good looking for the time. And now, as for the game's music, thankfully, the music in this game is pretty good for the most part. Now, I will say, not every song is a winner here, but there is a few songs in here that I really do like and do stand out. And of course, they fit with the game for that there's a lot of metal sounding tracks, but as much as I do like them here, I don't find them to be like the greatest sounding metal tracks that you can hear on a Super Nintendo. I mean, just listening to the final boss theme in Yoshi's Island is like, holy shit. But without comparing aside, this one still has its good tracks that are worth listening to, even outside of the game. So now, if you want to go out and buy this game, well, the cheapest I've seen it for was $10 for a loose cart, and the highest I've seen it for was about 60-something dollars for a complete in box. But I have seen other complete in box copies that were a lot cheaper than that, even going for like $36. So at least if you do wanted to own this game, even if you wanted it just for the sick looking box art, at least it won't cost you an arm and a leg. And now, as for my overall thoughts on Zoku, The Legend of Bishin, is that this game is pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I really tried to like this game for not only for the sick looking box art and like the style of the game, and also the idea of having like driving and beat 'em ups. I mean, that just sounds like a badass game, but sadly, they missed the mark completely. So not only are the controls are kind of an issue, even though they're not the worst controls ever, they are still annoying. But probably my biggest issue with this game would have to be the fact that you have to get from point A to point B within a giant labyrinth of like roads that even lead to dead ends most of the time, and you have no idea where the fuck you're going, and you have to do it all in a time limit. Like, why is it always the fucking time limit? At least you do get unlimited continue, so if you die, which you will die a lot, it's mostly from the time limit, from taking random shitty guesses, at least you don't get like a limited amount of them and you gotta start all the way back at the very beginning of the game, thankfully. But still, I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter because this game sucks dicks! Yep, it's another one of those games that looks really cool but just falls flat short. And of course, I can't really recommend this game to most people unless you really do want to try and like this and find other good things about it, then be my guest. Just don't expect it to be anything decent. But with that said, guys, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.